Aloha and welcome to Island Connections. I'm Ibrahim Aoude, Micronesians between two worlds. For this program, we have with us our guest, Joakim Peter. He is a Ph.D. student at the College of Education at Mānoa, and also he is a member of the Micronesian Community Advocacy Group. And welcome, Joakim. We call you Jojo. Welcome, Jojo, yes, for coming and sharing with us your time and to talk about these important issues. So first, if you would say something about your involvement in the Micronesian question, okay, and we can go from there in terms of what's happening recently and then discussion of history and so forth.
Yes, there are several groups that have been involved lately in the most recent issues regarding the Micronesian communities and what we call COFA citizens. Mm-hmm. COFA means Compact of Freely Associated State Nations, and those are the Micronesian nations that are under this term of treaty agreement with the U.S. that allows them to come into Hawaii and the rest of the U.S. without any passport. I mean, just with the passport. But our groups have been very involved. COFA, Community Advocacy Network, COFA CAN, as well as Micronesian Health Advisory Coalition, MHAC. And most recently, our efforts have been focused on the healthcare issue because it's such a major issue with the Micronesian groups, the COFA group. It started in 2000, or back in 1996 when Congress decided to reform the welfare programs. Mm-hmm. And then as a result of that, the COFA citizens were taken, for some reason, they were left off the eligibility groups list for the traditional Medicaid program, mm-hmm, which has been the program that assists the low income in the U.S., those who are eligible for it. Mm-hmm. And we had been on that program, and then in between 1996 and when the economic downturn, mm-hmm, really affected the economy, then in 2009, the state of Hawaii administration decided that they were going to propose a new reduced coverage for specifically for the COFA residents. It was called PHH, mm-hmm, Basic Health Hawaii, mm-hmm, which was a program that we felt at that point that would have some major negative repercussion on the health of the Micronesian people, especially the ones who came here with the goal of looking and seeking out for proper medical treatment. Mm-hmm. Those with radiogenic treatment and especially the dialysis, as diabetes is a major issue in our population and communities. But so through a series of court cases, the state of Hawaii decided at the end that they were going to move ahead with the change. But when the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act came in, I think the state saw that opportunity to move a significant portion of the COFA population from the MedQuest program, mm-hmm, onto the Health Connector. And that's the most recent thing that we've been struggling with since November of last year, mm-hmm, when they announced that the COFA citizens would be moved to the Health Connector, the ones who are called non-ABD, like aged, disabled and blind and women, pregnant women and children would remain on the MedQuest. Mm-hmm. That's the smaller number. But the major number between the age of 19 to 64, that's about 7,000 plus people, would be moved from the MedQuest onto the Health Connector. Mm-hmm. So recently we've been working with the Hawaii Health Connector in trying to mitigate this switchover. Mm-hmm. But that will have a lot of issues, and that's kind of like where we at this point. And
right.
Yeah.
because we have done a few programs previously, and one of them was also we discussed the Basic Health Hawaii, but it's always good to remind our viewers about that. So we might want to do that perhaps later on in connection with what's really going on right now and so forth. But we would, it might be a good idea to remind viewers about why do we have Micronesians here in the first place? I mean, is it like they coming because they are like violating US laws, or what is the reason behind that? Because it's really critical for people to understand.
And that has been a source of misconception and lack of understanding in our communities among citizens, not just here in Hawaii, but I think the larger United States in general. The average population doesn't understand why there are Micronesians in Hawaii. In Hawaii, we are talking about 15,000+. In the greater all of the United States combined, maybe about 45,000. Now remember, the population of the region is no more than 200,000. That's Marshall Islands, Republic of the Marshall, Federated States of Micronesia, and Republic of Palau. Republic of Palau has a smaller population. That's a nation of FSM has about close to about 150,000 people. And then Marshall Islands is about somewhere in between that. But
you're not including now.
Not including Guam. Not including Guam and Northern Marianas. Guam is a territory of the U.S. and has been since 1893, when the United States and Spanish got into that Spanish-American War. And as part of that treaty, after that, Guam became a territory and continues to be a territory of the United States to this point.
And not including CNMI.
CNMI, or the same cultural group with the same language and same, historical background as Guam, Saipan, Tinian, and Rota, are a commonwealth of the United States. And this came about in 1976 as the territory of the Pacific Trust Territory of the Pacific Island, with which the U.S. was entrusted to under the UN trusteeship program.
So when you're counting numbers of, maybe there are CNMI people here, pretty sure of that.
Yeah, they are, and they are under a different
So these are not
status.
part of the number of Micronesians who are here. You're talking about COFA.
Right. We're talking about COFA, and when we talk about COFA, citizens, which is really a new label, because the Compact of Free Associations didn't really start until 1986.
Right.
And that was a push towards self-determination and a way for the United States to sustain its military interests in the islands. And if your history serves us right, to our memory, that region was taken over by the United States after World War II as part of the UN trusteeship program. But most importantly for the United States, it's a strategic trusteeship. Part of the agreement is that the United States would be allowed to, exercise its exclusive strategic and military rights in the islands.
Right, and also that out of 14 trusteeships, 11, it's the only strategic trust. So is there a reason why?
Well, there was a reason, because the United States, first of all, some people in the U.S. government really wanted an outright annexation of the islands. And then in the same government, the Department of State reminded them that the United States should not be a colonial, ruler, because, President Kennedy gave the speech that we are not a colonial, nation, and we have been colonial, we had been product of colonialism, But when the United States saw that its opportunity, especially after World War II, to exercise its military control, it sort of ran counter to the spirit of the trusteeship. And the spirit of the trusteeship is that towards the end of, all of that each trust territories should be developed economically, socially, politically, to the point where they would achieve self-determination at the end, that they would be economically, socially, and politically independent at some point. But I guess, at that, I think in 1950s, between 1947 and then 1960s, when all of the anti-colonialism movements start happening all over the world, I think the United States sort of caught itself in a bind where they needed to, listen to the movement, and especially some Micronesians who were really pushing for some kind of political independence. So sort of like fast forward to the 1980s, after 13 years of negotiating these treaty agreements, in 1986, they had to run that through the UN Security Council, because that was one of the only trusteeship agreement that has that military strategic interest attached to it.
So actually, it's strategic because of its military value.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So one other thing, or a couple of things regarding the negotiations for COFA. I mean, Belau, held till the end.
Right. 1993.
Yeah. Right. And then they did certain kind of like smoke and mirrors and some kind of tricks to make it pass.
Yeah, put some pressure on the Republic of Palau government to make its nuclear-free requirements in the Constitution less restrictive.
Yeah.
To the fact that the U.S. will have nuclear submarines and nuclear power ships through Palau's waters. Yeah.
So that was part of this new nuclear-free and independent Pacific period from 1980. Actually, from before the nuclear-free Pacific, but nuclear-free and independent Pacific came out at a conference in Hawaii in 1980.
Yeah, but I think what we're trying to point out here is that there is a long historical relationship between the U.S. and its interest in the islands, and the islands in terms of its commitment to that interest. What basically ended up in the end, and what the compacts are really, one of the major components of the compact is the sustainability of U.S. military interests against the sovereign rights of the islanders. So basically, if you look at it this way, the Micronesian COFA nations have given up sovereignty over land, water, and air. And that's what we pay for the compact to the United States, and it has exclusive right to those whenever it needs to for the defense of the region and the defense of the United States. So that's a major part of the compact. One of those things we got out of the compact, because they realized that self-determination economically was not viable at that point. We knew that, for example, the educational system would still need a lot of development. Health system, especially, would still need a lot of support from them. So what they realized is that not only were they going to continue working on those in the islands, that there has to be an out valve, an open agreement that people should be able to move to the U.S., establish residency, work, and seek medical assistance and all of that stuff. So that's kind of like how that it's called. It's that open immigration.
Right. Yeah.
Thing came about.
Yeah, and also like so far as the Marshallese at least are concerned, there's the question of the nuclear issue there. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, it's still an ongoing thing because in 1950s the United States, conducted nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands, and places like Bikini and Rongelap and Enuatak and really suffered a lot of nuclear radiation from that to the point where they moved people off the islands and moved them back on, and then they realized it's still radioactive. They moved them off again. And even nuclear fallout from the Bravo test really, affected and directly affected, hit. It was like nuclear fallout
on people,
fell on people like snow, and they got sick, and then subsequently a lot of people died. And the legacy of that is that to this day, the people from Bikini still, and portion of other places, they still cannot go back to their island because it's still radioactive. So even today, they're still trying to deal with that effect, the Marshallese, and their long-term effect with the health and all of that thing. That's why it's sort of a sensitive issue, healthcare, with the Micronesians, because we know exactly what has happened in our history, in our relationship with the United States. So therefore, we felt that, there has to be some, some way to mitigate all of these health problems that has befallen our people. So when people came here with the healthcare issues, and then they face racism and they face a lot of obstacles, even for the most basic health, basic healthcare, eligibility, and not that we're not paying for it. We paid for it with that, our sovereignty. We came here and we continue to pay for it because we pay the taxes, and yet we cannot be eligible for that full,
and that is
safety net
what
program that we're paying for.
Yeah, what we can call discrimination.
That is the essence of the
absolutely.
The
and then the other
that
thing is that the Micronesian area has lived to its commitment with the bargain, but the U.S. hasn't. No. And so people think...
Well, here's what we look at it like. Ever since 1996, when we enacted this agreement, we have stuck to our commitment. Nothing has changed in our commitment. We continue to offer that. However, several things have sort of changed in midstream for and against us. When we come here, we were first eligible for the Medicaid program, which was good. A lot of people working very hard, paying into it. Their relatives who were sick were also, getting that services that they need. Then when those changes happen and people are no longer, on the same bar of treatment and eligibility as everybody else, that becomes a problem. Because for us, if you look at it, it's almost like the U.S. unilaterally changes the terms of those agreements without, us, and it has some major effect for us. So that part where you said, okay, you can come in with the open open door policy. It's almost like you invite us to your house, and which we have invited you to our house openly. You can come to our house, you can get into the door, but you cannot go there, you cannot go there, you cannot go there, or you cannot do this, I said, okay, well, that has sort of violated, and it undermined the spirit of that open, the open door policy that we've had.
But do you think, back to the COFA thing, I mean, this is really interesting because the U.S. had taken or occupied the islands or Micronesia during World War II after the defeat of the Japanese, etc. But then the relationship between the Micronesians and the respective entities, political entities that emerged from there, is not exactly, equal on an equal level between the U.S. and Micronesia. I mean, the Micronesians, were they free to the max in terms of saying, well, suppose they said we don't want COFA, would they have been able to do so? I mean, and then why I'm saying this because I'm looking at the question of Belau, for instance.
Well, it took 13 years of negotiation and a lot of give and take on our part. At first, of course, I think at that point of the negotiation, it's almost like, the United States already had what it needs, coming in, already had that idea of what it needs. It's a matter of just negotiating with the islanders and what terms of what part of the relationship it can sustain. It can get out of the. And you're right about Palau. Palau, it took about, until 1990, early 1990s for the compact to be ratified. The interesting part of it, because those compacts were 15 years long. Now, we're in the middle of what is called Compact 2, the second reiteration of that treaty. Palau's compact was actually signed by the President of the United States, but it's not ratified because in the Congress, because of the current climate of the Congress right now. So Palau has a compact 2 agreement that has not been ratified for several years now. And yet the United States continue to enjoy its relationship, the perks of that relationship under the same original compact.
Yeah. Actually, I remember they did the same thing with Kwajalein when the lease, the lease for the U.S. had expired. Then they kept the U.S. kept staying on there until they did some kind of trickery to maintain the lease through renewal, not with the landowners, but with the government, of the Marshall Islands.
Yes.
So that's, So
I think that's kind of been the
that.
historical characteristic of the U.S. Handling, policy in the region, in Micronesia. And we're looking at the major region between Hawaii and Japan. That's practically the northern hemisphere. So in terms of Micronesian compact nation commitment, to the United States, that's a lot of security commitment.
Yeah.
And I like to remind my friends when we talk about this that you enjoy the security at home because of what we have committed to. It's that sense of, like, when you talk about global security and all of that stuff, if you look at the northern hemisphere, that's practically all of Micronesia.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Guam to the west,
right.
to the Marshall Islands to the east.
Yeah, it's interesting, like with Guam, for instance, that it's not part of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, although geographically it is. Yeah, so you can see how, like, the U.S. might manipulate or make divisions in its own interests, regardless of what might be the interest of the Micronesians as such. That's why I was talking about whether there was equality in the negotiations, etc. But anyway, you have satisfied that. Now, okay, someone in Hawaii who hates Micronesians, for instance, might say, well, okay, that's between the U.S. and Micronesia. I mean, this kind of agreement, etc. Why should I, as a taxpayer, support these Micronesians who do nothing except, like, are on welfare and all of that? So what might be your
Well,
response?
first of all, that whole concept of, I think that's kind of like the stereotype, and it's not true. Micronesians are hardworking people who moved here, and one of the major reasons when we did a survey in 2012. One of the major reasons that people moved here, for people moving here, is to find work, and they have been working very hard. And if you look at that survey, it will show that within each household, there are more people working in each household than people who are not working. And usually the people who are not working are the grandmothers or grandfathers, old uncles, who of course are not working. But I think there is that mistake that people make because of the way the media has portrayed and the way people talk without really understanding the full picture. And there are a lot of people working and paying taxes, and there's a lot of people who have all really start moving up in the economic scale to the point where we have several businesses. We have individuals who are relatively successful, and I think on our program today, people will see that we have sort of portrayed and show profiles of people who have been making it. But back to the tax issue, and it's like we pay the same tax too, by the way. We pay all of it, but unlike everybody else, we don't have full access to those programs that people sort of accuse us of, leeching of it's so lopsided and against Micronesians here in terms of the benefits versus what we contribute. We contribute fully to all of the taxes just like everybody else here. And the point that people come in and work and pay all of those taxes right away. And yet, as a group, we are not we don't have access and eligibility to most of the programs that
which this to me is institutional discrimination, structural discrimination. On the one hand, the U.S. is not living up to its own commitments, although it wants the Micronesian entities, political entities, to live to their own commitments, and this is unfair. The other thing is Hawaii is part of the U.S. politically and economically, and is governed in terms of the U.S. Constitution and so forth. And so if there is a problem, we have to solve it in such a way without discriminating against Micronesians. But this is easier said than done because of the animosity that one faces as a Micronesian.
And I think that's sort of it has dulled people's senses to what has traditionally been a very good way and a very good place that responds to immigration and immigrants. And the whole United States is an experiment in immigration values. And we have always been a nation, or this has always been a nation that builds and opens its arms to people who are looking for a better life. And the fact that they have sort of painted the picture of Micronesian as opportunists, sort of like taking without giving. It's not anything, of course, it's nothing new in the history of this nation. Because other immigrant groups have faced the same issue. However, what I'd like to point out is, if we had learned these lessons in the past, and we are products of that, negative part of the history of our place, why should then we turn around and do the same thing to other people? I think it's, and people are like, well, deal with it and stuff like that. There are some consequences of which it's really hard to just say, well, deal with it, because that's part of it. When people are, when kids are being bullied at school, to the point where their future is compromised, and people are being discriminated against in seeking health care, to the point where it compromises their lives. That's where we have to draw the line.
Absolutely.
Yes. Jokes are jokes. We all do jokes. But there are those that go overboard and to the point where it undermines the quality of life and even threaten people's life, in seeking the services or in being part of the community. That's where we have to really draw the line and say, this cannot happen,
Yeah, I want to show a segment of a video that we have, and then we can comment on it. It's about life of Micronesians here and also in Micronesia.
When the Bluetooth first came out, there was a joke that was on the radio about how Micronesians complain that it is discriminatory. How about the cold tube? Because that's what we use.
A lot of people comment about the things we wear, our skirts, dresses that we wear around on the streets.
The word Micronesian is used here in Hawaii like a bad name.
This is Aloha land, but sometimes it doesn't feel like Aloha. They're looking for better medical care. Provide a better education for their kids. They're looking for a better life for themselves and for their family.
I own my own house. I design it, so whatever the flaws and the good about the design is all mine. I was born on Saddle Island, yeah. When I was in elementary school, my dad would always make sure that I did my homework. Using those lanterns, the coconut oil lantern, would do my homework, or in the moonlight when it's full moon out. I went to high school very serious about learning. I went to Otter Island High School in Iolete and graduated at that time. I was so excited to come to Hawaii, but as we were approaching Honolulu early in the morning, and I looked down and I just saw the lights, for some reason, like, I had a change of heart, like, what did I do? What have I just done to myself? I faced difficulties that it would have been a difficulty back home. Going to school, there was a period where I was only drinking water for 2 weeks. I didn't have any more money to buy food. I woke up one day and I said, what am I doing feeling sorry for myself? I'm a fisherman. I just gotta make time to go fishing. Came back and roast my catch and eat and survive. I enlisted when I came to University of Hawai'i, Hilo in 1987. I didn't have any money to pay for my tuition. My first assignment was in the Philippines, constructing all kinds of structures. I was in Iraq, and we get bombarded every day, every night. Heading back out to their station. We dedicate this work to our families at home front, who have to carry double work for them and for us. We thank them for all the hard work that they put in to make us or to help us focus on our mission over here. We're really, really grateful for all that they do. I'm the general manager. We do electrical construction, from very low voltage construction, meaning communications, fiber optic, copper telephone lines, to high voltage, installing the pole and lines that you see out there. What's the telephone lines, right behind you?
It's interesting, though, that he's from Sarawak.
Yes.
And so there's a connection. You know,
Yeah.
that's one. The other thing is that I look at the video, I see similar lifestyle with indigenous Hawaiians, like Kanakau Maoli, Kanakau Ibrahim.
We're all islanders.
Yeah, and then we have, and yet we still have that kind of discrimination and also
Yeah.
like racism. Let's tell it like it is, racism against Micronesians.
Yeah.
So could you make comments on that?
I think for the lack of understanding. I mean, people are quicker to, to hate others that they don't understand, and because maybe we haven't really done a good job in, trying to get to know each other. And we have only tried to know each other through this cloud of, stereotypes. And it's almost to the point where we're just so caught up in all this noise. And this noise has sort of deafened the good side of us. It has prevented us from using our better judgment, because we try to understand each other through all of the thickness of these racist clouds. Unfortunately, it comes down from the top, and I don't want to. I meant that, and that I want our leaders to be better leaders. When they start coming out with policy like PHH, and go in front of the camera and start saying that this, in essence, saying that these people here have no worth, but, so we can't do this to them,
Yeah, you're talking about Basic Health Hawaii.
Right.
Okay. Could you say something more about that, Basic Health Hawaii, and how that developed,
Well, basically, it was sort of part of the state's during the economic downturn, and they were like, okay, we're going to balance the budget. So they said, we're going to save, 27 million if we just move these people from, from full coverage under MedQuest and move them under this program, PHH, with limited coverage, even though they knew, and other people were trying to say that it's not going to save money. First of all, it's budget category that you move on paper. It doesn't reflect real life. Because in real life, people don't get sick. They still, when they go to the emergency room, it costs more when you put people in the hospital. It's a lot cost effective to do preventative care.
Right.
So policy-wise, it doesn't work. And health experts were saying that that's not how you do proper health care. However, since, I guess because we don't have any political clout here in Hawaii, we cannot vote. And so it was an easy target for people to do it at that time. And especially at that time when there was so much, it gives leverage, the economic downturn gave leverage for people to start, assigning blame. And then easily said at some point where people are thinking that, oh yeah, the reason why there's such a, drag on the system is because of these people here. And then those things start coming down and filters down to the community, to the point where you start hearing and seeing these YouTube clips and hearing people tell these jokes and sort of refer to the people as, cockroaches invading in some sort of invasive species. Those are very derogatory terms. And that's kind of the way that the community has sort of like, look at each other and said, oh yeah, But I think what we need to do is, we're good people, all of us. And I think people like Tom and the rest of us, we want what is good for our family, just like everybody else. We don't want to, there's no cutting costs here. I mean, there's no cutting in line, so to speak, approach here. Yeah. And they said, the Micronesians are taking over the housing. We apply for housing just like everybody else. There is no special category or special favor category that Micronesian is like a passport card. We don't have that, despite of what people may think. We apply for services just like everybody else. Often, many times, we are discriminated against because we are Micronesian. But we apply for the services just like everybody else. We're not trying to get ahead of anybody. we're just trying to do the best that we can. We want our kids to grow up here, and we are part of this community and contribute to this community, just like we all do.
A couple of things. One is that more and more Hawaii activists now, mostly indigenous Hawaiians, have understood the situation, and that's why I refer to Satawal and its significance for
the island
indigenous
of
Hawaiians.
Maupi Island.
And they are doing something to like educate, at least in their own communities, etc. But I think, and I agree with you, that much depends upon the leaders and how they can put resources so that they can educate people about the benefits of having equality among all the population in Hawaii, regardless of where they came from, etc. And because the cost of discrimination and racism might be higher, than what it might be if there's no discrimination and so forth. So I think that's one important thing. And if there's beef between, on the question of the Micronesians, between the state of Hawaii and the federal government regarding why did the federal government stop funding its own commitments, to Hawaii and other maybe states in the country where there are Micronesians, then the congressional delegation here should be forcefully talking about that hey, you federal government is shortchanging the state of Hawaii, not take it on,
It's kind of like it's a fight between the federal government and the state government, and the Micronesians and the community are stuck in the middle.
Right.
And the state is saying, oh, we're not responsible for these people. This is the federal government's responsibility. And the federal government is like, well, they're in your community, But I think the fact that, and to the point where it's like we're caught in the middle of all of this, and really the whole state of Hawaii community, because we're all living in one community, is sort of caught between, in this battle between the state government and the federal government, where, and even just that picture of being called somebody else's responsibility, it doesn't really paint that picture of you being, a contributor.
Yeah.
It's almost like you are, a ward of something.
Of the state or something.
Yeah.
Well, I want to show another segment of this film, Doctors Exchange of Arizona, and I think it's an interesting one. We could talk about it.
What is the most that you see there? I find my job fulfilling. I work as an optometrist here in Phoenix, Arizona. There you go. Cover your left eye.
Left eye?
Mm-hmm.
Left eye.
I remember this one patient in his 60s. He came in and he was just screaming in excruciating pain, really, really high pressure in his eyes. And I remember feeling so helpless at that time because I was just a student. It made me think of back home, like how many people have to go through this, yet there's really no available care to help them. I was born and raised in Chuk, on Wada. I went through public school for the first 6 years of my life, and then I went to Saram and Chuk for 4 years. I graduated from Saram. I was the first graduate. Seems like a long time ago. I pursued science so that I could teach. I thought that I wanted to be a teacher. My goal at that time was to finish COM and go back home to Saram and Chuk, where I was going to teach for the rest of my life. At the end of my year at COM, there was a scholarship that was offered, but the only way I could get that scholarship if I pursued a 4-year degree. I finished my bachelor degree within 2 years here in Arizona, Grand Canyon University. This is something they wrote up about me. Always has a smile on your face, considerate, never disrespectful. I remember I got to the airport and I was like, okay, now what? I don't know anybody here. How do I get from here to my school? Coming from Chuk, not knowing how much money I had, I didn't have much. I realized that I needed to find work. Throughout the 2 years that I was at Grand Canyon, I actually had to have 2-3 jobs at one time to get me by. A miracle by grace of God, I made it through.
Happy birthday to you.
So it's interesting. Like there are Micronesians all over, practically all over the continental US, right? Did the other states, for instance, Arizona or Oregon, for that matter, did they cut services to the Micronesians because of budget problems or whatever? Or was
I think they never, unlike Hawaii, decided to kept COFA citizens on its state-run program. I don't think the other states followed through once the Medicaid was cut in 1986. They just sort of like let it go, and I'm not sure how the COFA citizens there are faring with that program. I know that one of the reasons why Hawaii has a good number of COFA citizens has always been because of the fact that Hawaii continued to maintain that eligibility for the MedQuest program, of course, until recently when they moved. We're in the process of moving that large number of 7,500 people, 75 plus, to the Health Connector. And I think and I think Hawaii has always traditionally been very supportive of immigrant populations and other non-traditional populations. And I think, case in point, I think the same-sex marriage law, and Hawaii leading the nation in that area, because it has that tradition of being supportive to other population. I also wanted to point out, especially with Tom, the previous vignette that we saw earlier, many Micronesians are in the military and have probably the highest rate of military representation of any other than any other ethnic group, and consequently, of course, death rate in the military.
Yeah,
and
death rate. Yeah.
And there is an interesting film that's going to be screened later on this month, and I think next week Thursday, on military service people who are of Micronesian ancestry. So that is an issue that, as we like to point out to people, that a lot of our young people are taking that part in the defense of the nation.
Yeah. So no, I want to show another one, another segment, Honolulu, Hawaii, since we are in Honolulu.
The name of my website is Islander in America. I make sure that I also talk about where Micronesia is. I also talk about what kind of experiences that these people went through. They're looking for a better life for themselves and for their family. Work, health reasons. Yes, they want to come here and get better medical attention. Number 3 is education, and they always say that they want to come here, provide a better education for their kids. The thing that is really floored me is that when they realize where I'm from, and they're like, wow, you speak very well for a Micronesian. Something is wrong being a Micronesian. This is Aloha land, but sometimes it doesn't feel like Aloha here. I help some women with their application for work.
So like the people want to work and they want to be helped with the applications for work and all of that. So these just few clips show like the difference between the stereotype and the ignorance that the stereotype reflects. And the reality of the situation, that's one thing. The other thing that I would like you to comment on, when you have a strategic trust through the United Nations and the U.S. responsible for Micronesia, is to develop that geographic area, Micronesia, so that it can stand on its own feet, right? I mean, that's the main thing.
That has already been thrown out the window by GAO.
Well, that's what I'm looking at. So, for instance, had the Micronesian had hospitals like that they can take care of, like nuclear issues and illnesses and stuff like that, they wouldn't come here.
Of course, nobody would like to leave their home.
Right. So there is a failure then, and this is the thing. So could you comment beyond that and why the reason why Micronesians are here? Right.
Well, I think that there is this pull and push factor that you have to look at. And the push and the pull factor, the push factor is that at home there is no reliable healthcare, system that will take care of the kind of illnesses that you see here. The pull factor is that there is that here. And the General Office, Accounting Office of the United States, GAO, has already said in its report that one goal, that one of 3 goals of the compact, which is to set up the nation so that they be like sustainable, is not achievable. It's not achievable under the structure of the compact. So even the GAO has already said that. So the nations are like, COFA nation, like Federated States of Micronesia, is only 36 years old. It's only 36 years old. And for anyone to think that we can achieve that self-sustainability in development and everything within 36 years, if it wasn't achieved with all of the power of the United States from 1947 up to 1986, it will be a challenge for us to achieve that within 36 years of existence.
And there was neglect from 1946 till the COFA, period, by the United States, because that's what the trusteeship was about. Developing the country.
That's the goal of trusteeship.
Right. And that's a failure there. So we don't want to discuss why the failure. We can imagine, it's cheaper to do what has happened.
Well, let me just say this. Between 1946 and 1986, the most powerful nation in the world was in charge of setting up, by the United Nations, was in charge of ensuring that this 200 or 190,000 people will have economic sustainability before they were, before self-determination. And it didn't happen.
So here we have like the victim is being blamed for their own problems that were a creation of not themselves, because they're trying to find ways of getting out of it. One of the ways of getting out of it is come to the United States so that, under the COFA agreement, the United States would live up to its own commitments. So that's
yes, and all I have to say is that the stereotype is that we are not contributors, but we are. Right. We have contributed, we continue to contribute, and our contribution, however, unfortunately, has been lost because of all of this racist clouds
Right.
that is hanging over our heads and has clouded our judgment in our community.
I just want to say that, sorry, this video I'm showing segments from is about 54 minutes, and it has a number of examples across the U.S., of Micronesians succeeding and doing things and wanting to work and sometimes not finding work and all of that. Yeah. So that's, I think that's a critical matter to say. And I look forward also to watching the other video coming up in terms of how Micronesians have really contributed to the United States in multiple ways, including the military and so on. Any comments regarding what's the plan for Micronesian activists now? What
I think
would like to do
everyone can participate, and not just Micronesian activists. And I think everyone in the community can participate by, first of all, we need to educate ourselves properly about the challenges within our communities. And issues like healthcare is a major issue. That's where we can really, come together and push for positive changes. And one of those issues, for example, lately, is since the Micronesians are being moved onto the health connector, and that's where you still pay. You pay co-pays, you pay all of the other things. Even though the state is taking care of some of the premiums, you still ended up paying. And for families who are economically challenged, those are major issues to decide whether you put money on the table or you go see the doctor. And often the compromise is not to see the doctor. Yeah. But I want the community to be supportive of efforts that we put together to try to support this. So again, our community is a vibrant community. It's doing its part, and we just need to for the rest of us to have a better understanding of how we're.
No, I want to say that my department, the Department of Ethnic Studies, has been working with Micronesian communities on Oahu and trying to educate our students about Micronesia and the Micronesians and so forth to combat racism and stereotypes, stereotyping people and so forth. The other thing is that when we have people saying something on radio about Micronesians, etc., we got to stand up for them. And in fact, one of our students created a movement so that they went after that radio station, and that radio station really apologized for that. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me
to us about. And thank you, viewers, for watching, and see you next month. Mahalo no loa. Aloha.